Meeting of the Office of Planning and Development, the Planning Commission, Parish of Ascension. It's called to order. It's June 12th, 2024, 6 o'clock p.m. We're in the courthouse, Ascension Parish Courthouse, 607 East Worthy Road, Gonzales, Louisiana, 70737, Council Chambers, first floor. First item on the agenda, the second item besides calling it to order, is roll call of the members.
Michelle Unitas.
Here.
Mark Villa.
Here.
Nicholas Miller.
Here.
Max Nassar.
Here.
Wade Scheck-Snyder.
Here.
Randy Cluott.
Here.
Julio Dumas.
Okay, everyone's in attendance. Mr. Miller, would you lead the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Introduction of staff, Stacy.
Stacy Webb, Recording Secretary for the Planning Commission.
Jerry Iskiri, IT.
Jean-Paul Robert, Parish Attorney.
Eric Poche, Director of Planning and Development.
Skylar Wasso, Ascension Parish Transportation.
Sean Chereau, Engineering Reviewing Agency.
Stoker Brown, Engineering Review Agency.
Okay, thank you all. Next item on the agenda is chairman's comments. Sometimes I have comments and sometimes I don't. Tonight we have a few things on the agenda that I think are going to probably stimulate some public participation as well as some pretty robust commission conversation. From the standpoint of the public, if you're going to want to make a comment, please step over by Ms. Stacy and fill out a card. Also be advised that you've got, according to commission rules, each individual will have up to 3 minutes to speak. I'll enforce that 3 minutes, so please make your comments concise and to the point. And a good way to do that is not to be repetitive with which someone else said that you support, but make your own comments. Relative to the commission, I'm going to ask that as we get into our discussions. I know usually I'm a little loose on letting people just speak whenever they feel like it. Please wait to be recognized before you speak. That way we'll keep the conversation on some of these items a little more organized. The next item on the agenda is public comment on any agenda item. With that, Stacy, is there anything that you have, public comment at this point?
None.
Okay, staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In front of you have the normal subdivision staff report. For the month of June, nothing has really changed. Everything is as it was in prior months. We have a couple of things that are possibly going to be submitted in the next couple of months. If anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next item is ordinance discussion, solar farm standard for development. Now, this item is for discussion, not action.
That's correct. It's to be heard by the zoning commission. However, there were no items on the zoning commission meeting, and I figured since it was the same body that we would have it for discussion, it will be on for public hearing at the zoning commission meeting next month. I assume you've had chances to go through it. If anybody has any comments or questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer them or enter into the discussion.
So, Commissioners, we were given a copy of that proposed ordinance at our last meeting, and so the floor is open. Does anyone have any comments? Questions?
I did have a comment. So there was what was given to us at the last meeting as the proposed zones, and then I see something that's a little slightly different in this breakout from the copy you gave us last.
There may have been in the packet was the latest one. The one that I gave out at the last meeting, I noticed a couple of typos after I went back to the office and looked at it. But the one that you have in your packet is the latest version.
Soon I saw that you'd stricken the I think it was aviation, an airport district region that was in the last one, in that other
Yes.
version.
Yes,
that
well, I
because
mean, because we only have one airport district that's totally consumed by the airport. And then the other zoning category that you have is the C5, which is 1 unit to 5 acre and 5 acre parcels, that doesn't allow any fill, and it just wasn't practical to include that into the list of possibilities.
And what's the difference between the rural and the rural district? I mean, they both say R. Is there any difference?
No.
In the definition?
Oh, RM, well, you have medium intensity residential, which
No,
is
no,
RM.
The rural, one says, the original version said just rural, and then it says rural district in this version. Is there a differentiation between
No,
those
no,
definitions at all?
no.
No, okay.
Further questions, comments? Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Engineering staff report, Mr. Sherrill.
There's no report this evening.
No report. Next item on the agenda is the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve, deny the minutes? Motion by Mr. Villa, second by Mr. Dumas. Cast your votes, please. Seven yeas, motion passes. The next item, item 10, is the consent agenda. We have two items on the consent agenda: affidavit of mortgage declaration, LJG Land Company LLC, tract X8A1A1. Let me reread that. Tract X8A1A1, tract Y8B5A, and tract Y8A1, Ascension Commerce 2 Industrialplex Avenue, Geismar. And the other item, B, on the consent agenda, is affidavit of mortgage declaration, Oven Santos, Lot 9B2A1, 41399 Merritt Evans Road, Prairieville, Louisiana. Any commissioners want to remove anything from the consent agenda? We have a motion? Motion by Mr. Kluwat, second by Mr. Dumas. Any discussion? No, there's no discussion. Cast your votes. 7 yeas, motion passes. Item 11 is a public hearing to approve or deny the following family petitions. John Duplechain property, lot J2A1 through J2A7, Earls and Associates.
How you doing? James Falgo, representing the Alexander and Duplechain family on the following family partition, asking the commission for approval.
Okay, this is a public hearing on the John Duplechain property, lot J2A1 through J2A7. Anyone wishing to speak?
Lisa Louie.
Please come to the front, please. And ma'am, I'm going to ask you, state your name and your address, please.
Lisa Louie, 10474, Highway 431, Santa Maria, Louisiana, 70774.
Okay. And remember, you have 3 minutes, okay?
Okay, I only have a question. So I have a shared right-of-way with Mr. Ori Duplechain, and it was for him and our family using each other's property. I have questions about what happens to that when people start building, who's responsible for the upkeep on that right-of-way, and I didn't know if this parish could tell me that.
Mr. Poche, please.
I always recommend that anytime a family partition is done, all of the homes or property owners that live along that servitude of passage get together and come up with an agreement, because it is a private servitude of passage. But I think it would probably be best to have an agreement with all the parties as to what percentage, how often, and who's gonna take care of it. But the parish doesn't really have any say in it. That's my opinion. That's what I normally tell people.
Okay, and I don't have a problem with the property being dispersed to his children, that's fine. I just am looking for what happens to that right-of-way when there's so many people accessing. And who's
By him agreeing and signing off on the map, it says that he's responsible for maintenance of the road as well. But when it's sold and donated to the kids, they're gonna be signing and agreeing to the same map, so.
Well, I
It's
have
always
no
a civil
complaint.
matter, so everybody gets together.
I'm perfectly fine then.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
You've been a good man.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this particular item? John Duplechain property, lot J2A1 through J2A7. Public hearing is closed. Commissioners, discussion, comments, motions? Motion to approve by Mr. Villa, second by Mr. Scheck-Snyder. Almost did it again. Any discussion? You can cast your votes, please. 9 yeas. I mean, 7 yeas. Well, the other group I'm on is 9 people. Next item on the agenda is Clyde Villar and Ux property, track B1A through B1E, Earls and Associates LLC, Council District 10.
Representing the estate of Ruby Ann Tomplay Villar Estate, we're just asking approval for the division to give her property to divide up between the grandkids and one to the son.
Okay, this is a public hearing on Clyde Villar Annex property, track B1A through B1E. Anyone signed to make public comment?
No.
Okay, I guess I forgot the public hearing is now open and the public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, comments, questions, motion? Motion to approve by Mr. Kluat, second by Ms. Unitas. Any discussion on the motion? Cast your votes. Seven yeas. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, Bill Woodward property, lots 4B1A and 4B1B, Earls and Associates.
Yes, representing the inherited property of the Willard brothers. Basically, both of the brothers inherited the property, so we're just dividing it up for them. Asking the commission for approval.
Okay, this is a public hearing on the Bill Woodward property, lot 4B1A and 4B1B. Stacy? Public hearing is closed. Commissioners? Motion to approve of Mr. Kluat, second by Ms. Unitas. Any discussion, questions, comments? Cast your votes. Seven yeas. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Vinewood subdivision, lot 5A1 and 5A2. This is BEI Surveying LLC, Council District 10.
Yeah, James Fowler with Earls and Associates, but I'm representing Seth Mosby and BEI Surveying. Asking the commission for approval on this family partitioning. The applicant, the father lives in the rear of the property, and he's just dividing it up so his son can move up in the front.
Okay. It's a public hearing, Vinewood subdivision, lots 5A1 and 5A2, BEI Surveying LLC. Stacy?
None.
Public hearing is closed. Commissioners?
You gonna continue that gravel drive all the way to the back?
I'm assuming, yes. Yeah, it's existing drive, it's a gravel drive, isn't it? Let's see. Part of the drainage service, so yeah, they're gonna, we'll be accessing it through the big field gravel.
Through the
drive.
front property, okay,
No, there's a private service, so yeah,
okay. 30-foot? Yeah, I see the private property.
it's like the private service.
It looked like-
through the,
Yeah, it looked like it stopped, that's why I was
drainage
wondering.
service.
Right, that's why, it looked like it stopped right there, so. Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Villa, second by Mr. Miller. Any conversation on the motion? Cast your votes. Motion passes 7 yeas.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Next item on the agenda, I know I'm going to mess this name up. Michael Vanchet property. Am I close? Lot Y1A, 1A through Y1A, 1H, McLean Taylor, Inc., Council District 3.
Ellen Jackson with McLean Taylor Incorporated, asking for your approval.
Okay, this is a public hearing on the Michael Vanchet. Am I saying it right?
Yeah?
Okay. Property, lot Y1A, 1A through Y1A, 1H. Stacy?
None.
Public hearing is closed. Commissioners, you have any comments, questions, or do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kluat, second by Mr. Schexnayder. Is there any conversation or discussion on the motion? Cast your votes, please. 7 yeas. Thank you, ma'am. Next item on the agenda is 12A. It's a public hearing to approve or deny the following preliminary plat. Ascension Commerce Center 2 first filing, Mansell Buller and Associates LLC, Council District 2. Sir?
My name is Derek Murphy of Quality Engineering and Surveying, here tonight representing Ascension Commerce Center 2 first filing. We're here tonight asking for your approval on preliminary plat. Ascension Commerce 2 first filing is 14 lots on 186.39 acres. This piece of property is zoned properly. It's zoned light and medium industrial. We went through the entire process and all comments have been addressed. We're here tonight to ask for your approval and we're here to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is a public hearing on Ascension Commerce Center 2 first filing, Mansell Buller and Associates. Is anyone here to speak?
Yes. Norbert Lathan.
Sir?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Thomas Evan.
Well,
You either?
excuse me one second, Stacy. Sir, you, when you fill out your card and you check not to speak, was it a red card or a green card? Red card.
Both
So you're
opposed.
opposed? All right, thank you.
Both are opposed.
Both are opposed, okay, thank you. Who's the other, Stacy?
That's all. Thomas
Okay.
Evan, he didn't want to speak either.
Okay, okay. Public hearing is closed. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Murphy? Any discussion? Yes, sir, Mr. Dumas?
Mr. Murphy, I just want to make it clear that what's before is the preliminary site plan. We're going to have to go through the final plat review process at a later date, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right now, the access to this property is off of this very little narrow street off of 30.
Off Industrialplex, yes.
Off
of 30.
Industrialplex. Well, 30 through Industrialplex. And I understand that you're proposing to widen the road a little bit.
Yes, we're proposing to widen the road in order to make it
Closer,
more passable.
more passable.
Yes.
As you know, the parish and DOTD are working through some connections to a new interchange and all that other good stuff. We don't know what that route's going to be.
Right.
Okay? And so in reviewing this and discussing it with staff, some of the questions that I had and what have you, I think that your preliminary plat looks very good, looks fine, and obviously we're going to get to see it at a later date as a final plat. But I think that you need to recognize it's a site plan, and during that final plat process, hopefully we'll have a clear picture of what DOTD is going to do. And so we will, in all likelihood, require you to connect to that other access so that you can have better access to this property. But unfortunately, I don't think we know where that is today.
Well, and that's why we have two right-of-ways. We have one going out to the northwest and one going out to the north in order to have a continuation if the next filings come about, and those site plans will connect to these roads and then connect to the future, any type of DOTD corridors and so forth on the future filings.
Yeah, but our problem is that we don't know if those are gonna be the right-of-ways. DOTD is working on this, and it'd be premature for the parish to commit to those. So I appreciate that. I mean, I see that you've tried to address it, But I might defer to Eric to provide some more information on that.
The main thing that we're concerned about is we are assuming that there will be an interchange at Corner View Road. And we would just like to make it known that in future filings, that even though there may be flexibility, that there will be some kind of preservation of a corridor that can connect to Corner View Road, Highway 30, LA 73,
Right,
in the future planning of the
future
project.
filings,
Yes, in future filings of the project. That's one of our main concerns, because we would like to go to DOTD and tell them, should this be approved, because eventually this property is going to be developed, and we would like to get some kind of firm commitment from DOTD as far as, okay, where's the route going to be? So that everybody can move forward and plan accordingly.
So,
Joe,
Mr. Murphy, one second, please. Mr. Murphy, based on Mr. Poche's comments, is that something you feel that you can commit to at this point with the connection, Corner View Road?
Well, if the DOTD comes in, we talked about, having a corridor preservation on the northern side, or in the future filings coming in, depending on depending on the route that DOTD wants to do, whether the Corner View comes in or a connection on 73 or so forth, the future filings is where that mostly comes into play. This is kind of set, and the reason we put those, I guess, connections to the north and to the west was so this filing could connect to those future corridors as they come through. And yes, we do have commitments from the landowner on future filings to do those preservations of those corridors, and making sure that it goes from property to property and those kind of things.
Okay, Mr. Dumas, go ahead.
All I was just gonna say, we're at the preliminary plat, so, we obviously can't condition it, it's a preliminary plat, more like a preliminary site plan. I just wanna put the developer, the owner on notice that, we don't know where those right-of-ways are, and I think collectively between him, DOTD, and the parish, we need to work on those rights-of-ways so that we can finalize them for the collective better of not just you, but the surrounding community. At the end of the day, we have to be cognizant of their needs for ingress and egress as well, so.
And we have no problem with that on the next filings, and this is locked in and going to the property line so we can make a master plan, master connection, and those corridors.
You ready for a motion?
No, Mr. Schexnayder, we're ready for a motion, but we'll let Mr. Schexnayder speak first.
Please.
Mr. Murphy, one of the questions I had was, this has come up before us before, and in this general area, we have a lot of people off of Robert Wilson Road, and they have a lot of concerns. Can you put, or potentially shed some light on this connection or, interference with Robert Wilson Road, or can you, put some at ease of these homeowners? Is this going to affect anything on Robert Wilson Road or not?
This filing, the first filing, has no connection to Robert Wilson Road at all. It's only connected to Industrialplex, which discharges directly onto Highway 30, and it has no connection on Robert Wilson at all.
Okay, that was my first question. The second question I had, and this is something a little bit directed at staff. I'm looking at the traffic study, and my biggest question is, if you look at where the next available intersection at 73 and 30, miles away, how do we justify that we're using that intersection's information for a development that is literally miles away? How are we justifying that when we have numerous businesses that have free reign, in the middle of that? So can somebody explain that to me?
Yes, I'll attempt to answer that. The current ordinance says look at the nearest major intersections, typically in each direction, it says typically signalized. I believe the first one signalized is maybe it's Ashland Road down. Because of the number of trips on this one, we just went ahead, and it's an important corridor, just asked, which a lot of this traffic study, you're asking them to include additional things in their analysis. So that's the reason why we asked them to go to 73 and 30, go ahead and include that into their report. So that's the answer to your question. So we have the latitude in the draft impact study it's a lot of typical, pair of the parish engineer, ERA. We just asked them to go, because we already asked them to go to the interchange, so we asked them to go ahead and go to 73 and 74.
But we're not asking them to go north to, what is it now, Tanger, in that area. So we have it going basically, well, north to the Baton Rouge area, but not south to where the other area, which is a much closer intersection.
This is I say difficult, this was a more challenging area to scope because there's so much ongoing construction activity, and there's a roundabout in construction right now at Landry, which impacts traffic. There's already been plans, by DOTD to go improve the entire interchange intersection, so that's a design that we can't see today, but they have to plan for the future, so that's accounted for. The entire Tanger Road intersection with 30, we all know that's already been thoroughly vetted by both the Tanger thing and DOTD to be able to proceed with that project. So there's things that are already well ahead and to get ready for construction type projects, that for us to ask to go analyze those things or that further analysis, it just didn't make sense for us to do that.
Well, and the reason I ask that is, I'm just trying to find consistency for what we're looking at. When we're looking at this just in an individual scenario, essentially what we're seeing right now is we have to either tell the developer to go to Highway 73 and 30 and improve that intersection before he can get final plat and COs, which is not going to happen.
Right, well, my interpretation of traffic ordinance, it's really the immediate entrance that you have. What is your impact to the roadway? And this project's already shown they need a dedicated westbound right turn lane industrial plex, and I believe they looked at it, if they have to do a left turn into it, it's already striped and ready to go. But DOTD controls all that, and they got to factor in the upcoming roundabouts in that design anyway. The other part of ordinance is help the planning commission see what is the infrastructure like. How is it performing with the study? So now you have in front of you 73 and 30. You have information in front of you. We're able to talk about it, but you at the planning commission, you make a decision based on information. Do I want to factor into what goes on with this particular project? And when I look at this one, yes, you can see in the table, it has a level service of E. But the ordinance, you got to get into the details. It says when you see a development that caused the overburden of the development, as you can see on that thing, it's already an existing E without even building them. When you add into it, you sort of get into your conclusion. They're so far away. Their trips are so diluted, it's still an E. So they did not cause the overburden at that intersection. But you all know, further away, there's a project that's an E, that's an E, and that particular project already has plans and scopes and thought to be a roundabout by DOTD through another mechanism. So that's why it's there. So a lot of these, even the drainage studies, and this is the first time going through these types of projects. Drainage studies and traffic studies, there's a lot of information in here. Some is very specific to the project, and others is getting you a feel for the adjacent network infrastructure. Understanding that 73 and 30 is an E in a commercial corridor that has so many other people's traffic on it, in my opinion, means something different than if we were the first subdivision on a small 2-lane road in the middle of the parish, and I said, oh yeah, but that one's overburdened. I think you all would say, well, that means a bigger deal to me than something that's controlled by DOTD that's an industrial corridor. So that's why, yes, the information's here, we just have to process it together. Y'all are in a tough position. We're black and white. Here's the facts. This wasn't ordinance, and you have to evaluate, how do I want to use this information in considering what this project is doing?
And that's what I was hoping you would say, and that's why I wanted to ask these questions, because this does set precedent over other things that come before us if we did have a residential subdivision and something like this came, and one that was a big deal was Delone Estates and such.
And I believe since that time, this traffic ordinance, these wording, the tweaking of
Correct.
Bessel's font wording was part of the latest round of revisions.
updates.
There's a different ordinance in front of us now that wasn't, think of the previous ordinance before, sort of implied that the whole infrastructure that DOTD controls or someone else controls is not ready, you shall deny. This is more of if it caused the development, you have to factor, did it cause it or was it already existing? And what are my options when I want to approve a subdivision or consider the subdivision. There's more latitude now, in my opinion, when they made the latest revisions than the subdivision you just brought up. They revised the traffic impact ordinance, some of the wording to it, when they went back and revised it and said, this is the parish's, this is the first project we're seeing, was the parish traffic consultant that did this study. This wasn't hired by the developer. So y'all are in the first ones. I'm seeing the traffic study that's oversought, hired by the parish, reviewed by the parish, and done by the parish to do the analysis, and this is what the information they've came up with. So we're in a new era. It's just been a while to see a subdivision project in front of this planning commission in a long time that's done by the consultant with the new traffic impact study ordinance.
So let me reflect on that a little bit. This, as Mr. Sherrill said, this traffic study, the firm that did the traffic study was a firm that was vetted and approved by the parish, correct?
Correct.
The negotiation for the scope of that traffic study took about 3 months between the time it was first assigned and the time the contractor got a notice to proceed. During that time, that scope was vetted by planning, transportation, ERA, and I don't know who else. But it went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and the traffic engineer that did the traffic study.
Yes.
So my point to that is there was a lot of input in determining what the scope of that traffic study would be, including input by the parish, who I'm sure was very rigid in their demands as to what had to be included. So I am comfortable with the traffic study, is my point. Did you have any other comments?
Well, no, I just, like I said, this is more informative, not just for myself, for this commission, but for, all our other, general people in the community who have questioned traffic studies, how we've done it, things that we've done, different. Just like what you said, this is our first one. So it's best to start asking these questions to see that there are differences. These are how these differences are being enforced, and these are what these results are. So that's what I wanted to double check. Other than that, Mr. Murphy, the other question I had, and it kind of goes off of what Mr. Dumas said, is I read that the developer is willing to do some right-of-way designations. Those right-of-way designations, as we have them right now, is it possible that we can adjust those in the future if everything kind of does fall into a timeline to where we have the best and most efficient use of this roadway, that north-south corridor toward possibly Cornerview interchange, and then working with the parish for the east-west corridor toward 73 and such?
So I believe y'all have a letter that he wrote saying that he's willing to do that dedication now. I think with the parish, they'd like to tie it to the future filings. Correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, I'm not trying to, because they don't know exactly where that corridor is gonna be.
Right.
And so we just understand when we come back and before y'all with the next filings, that those corridors will be locked in at that point, hopefully with DOTD, or those dedications will happen with that future filing connection.
Okay. And like I said, you answered the question. I was very protective of the families off of Robert Wilson Road. That was one of the first things I dealt with whenever I served on this commission years ago. So I'm happy to hear that this will not have impact on them. So no further questions.
Okay, commissioners, any other commissioners? Questions? Mr. Miller?
I have a question for Eric. Assuming that we recommend approval of these new ODAs, these off-site assessments, tonight to go to the council and it gets adopted, this first filing, I'm assuming, would not fall under these new restrictions? But any future filings would, or would they be also
Correct.
grandfathered in?
Yes, anything that comes up to us from the point in time where the original preliminary plat was done, on a future filing would have to follow those guidelines.
So their filing right now is just the first filing, and any future filings are gonna fall under the
Correct.
new guidelines? Okay.
Commissioners, any other questions, comments? Mr. Dumas?
I'd like to make a motion to approve this preliminary site plan filing.
Mr. Chairman, can I say something real quick? I'm sorry,
Yes, sir.
Julio.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to, there are a couple of waivers or variances that I think need to be considered whenever we're doing the motion. Number one being a request from the waiver for the requirement to provide alleys at the rear of the properties. Now, as far as staff goes, and I think I put that in my report, we don't really have a problem with the larger lots. You've got lots that are 4, 5, 8, 10 acres. There's gonna be plenty of room, storage yards for everybody to get to where they need to and whatnot. But if you look at lots 1 and 2, we are unsure of exactly what is gonna be on those lots, and we would like assurances from the developer that there will be accommodations made so that any traffic could get off of the roadways, as was the intention of that portion of the ordinance. So I would, if you would, I would like that to be, number one, to be a discussion with the developer before you make your final motion. And then the second one is to allow for the use of asphalt streets in lieu of concrete, based on the fact that they will be public streets and the parish is not really equipped without hiring a third-party contractor to maintain those streets. And we would rather the streets be asphalt, so that they would be easier to maintain.
Mr. Murphy? You want to
As
just
far
go
as
ahead and
the
address
alleys-
that now?
What's that?
You want to just go ahead and address that now?
Yes,
before the
please.
motion?
As far as the lot 1 and 2 alleys, I would ask that you give the planning director that discretion, because depending on what the layout is, whether we need that alley or not, and they can make that call when they see the site plan per each lot. 'Cause these lots are gonna be staff level approval as we go forward. So if you can give him that authority to make that call on those alleys or not, because if the site plan doesn't deem that we need that alley, then we definitely don't want to take that real estate away to put the alley in. If we need it, and Eric and the staff agrees with that we need the alley, then he can hold us accountable to that alley. So that's what I ask on that. As far as the asphalt roads, we had concrete in one of our original submittals, and we were asked to remove concrete and put asphalt down just for that reason, for long-term maintenance purposes. We have no problem with asphalt. We put it as a waiver, and we put it in our section to be asphalt. And this is a similar cross-section as Ascension Commerce 1 that seems to be holding up well. It's 5/12, so it's a beefier section than the 3/10, which is a normal minimum street. So we didn't just give the minimum. We gave something that we know will hold up under this type of traffic long-term. And so we had no problem offering that.
Mr. Dumas?
I have a question for legal. If I recommend a waiver for the alley, with the exception of lots 1 and 2, which shall be at the discretion of the director, is that permissible?
You're asking if you can delegate authority for a waiver to the administration?
As for those 2 lots, yes.
I mean, Congress does that all the time. That's technically legal under a constitutional framework to do that. It's your prerogative as the commission to do it. You are abdicating your authority to the executive branch, so it is legal.
Okay.
It's just,
Well,
you know.
If that's the case, I would like to recommend approval, recommend approval of the site plan with a waiver for the alley, with the exception of lots 1 and 2, which the waiver shall be at the sole discretion of the director. Then the approval of the waiver from concrete to asphalt surface roads, and a condition that the turn lanes on Highway 30 be constructed. Well, can use the condition as a preliminary plat. It's a site plan, can't condition it. And
You're talking
with
about,
a note that says that the parish will need connections to other roads in the future.
Okay, so we have a motion. Before we have any further discussion, do we
can
have
I get a
second to-
clarification on the turn lane and make sure it's the turn lane at
Just,
industrial?
let me just get this process done. So we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Miller.
With the caveat that your waiver for the asphalt is going to be 5-inch over 12-inch base?
Yes, on the plat.
Okay.
Okay, so now we have a motion and a second, so now we can have discussion, and now I'll go to you, Mr. Murphy, because you wanted to make a comment.
Sorry, pardon me, Mr. Chairman. What I was wanting to clarify is that he's, Mr. Julio is talking about the turn lane at Industrialplex and 30.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. The Industrialplex, the intersection of 30 and Industrialplex, correct.
Okay, so with that correction, you still confirm the second. Any discussion on that?
Mr. Villa.
Yes, Mr. Villa, yeah, I see the yellow light.
Back to the asphalt, on what I'm looking at, I see 3-inch over 10-inch line base.
That's why it's going
I don't see 5 over 12.
The plat I'm looking at here is 5/12.
Well, not in our packet, so
Okay, yeah, we're more than happy to put 5/12, that's.
I know that,
I mean, with truck traffic.
yeah, we need a,
Yes,
that's how I would agree to it.
Okay,
Yes.
and that
Yeah, I'll
agreement's
put that-
been made, and
I'll put
that'll
that in
be in that'll be in our minutes that that agreement was made. Does that have to be in the motion, 5/12?
I would, it's not in the plan.
Okay,
That the asphalt road must be a minimum of 5/12.
okay. All right, any further discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Schexnayder.
You mentioned that we have future expansion toward other parish roads. One question I also had is this going to be in a traffic taxing district? So are we going to have a funding mechanism for this in the future?
Yes, industrial properties have not been included in that legislation. It's only for residential properties.
Okay. So, are we to assume that if they expand anything to other other parish roads, are we looking at, is it going off to, what is it, Robert H. Wilson, or is it the northern part of that road? Is that where they want to expand that to, or? It's just a question I had, because I don't see where we have that ability right now.
Yeah, we have, of course, this isn't the future filings, but we have no intent on tying into Robert Wilson Road.
Okay.
And Mr. Poche, is there a traffic impact fee?
Yes, they will pay traffic impact fees.
So a traffic impact fee, but not a district?
Not a district.
Not
Yes,
the
correct.
infrastructure. And one thing before I forget, one of the other things that we probably need to consider is the improvements to the width on Industrialplex, as well as the repair of any damaged sections that are there, considered in the motion.
Mhm. And the improvements to Industrialplex, that will bring the road to which width? What is it gonna be? Is it 18 feet, or is it 20, 21, 25?
It's 24 now, I think we're. Yeah, we're limited on what we can do, but we are trying to widen it as much as we can within that right of way.
Okay.
Okay, so what we're gonna need, what we have need to do is restate the motion, Mr. Dumas, with the clarity of all the discussion that we agreed to, and then get the second to confirm that he's still second. Just 1 minute, Mr. Villa?
I think he does not need to motion about the 512. I see it now.
Okay.
I'm assuming I'm looking at a 4-foot shoulder to that
Yes.
24-foot wide road.
Correct.
So,
Okay, let's restate the motion.
Okay, if I may, I also want to just make a comment about
Yes, sir.
Robert Wilson. There was a buffer that was required some time ago during the zoning, and this plan shows that buffer intact.
Okay.
So my motion is to approve this preliminary, I call it a site plan, preliminary plat, with the waiver for the alley, with the exception of lots 1 and 2, which will be at the sole discretion of the director, and to also provide for asphalt with, per the parish requirements, period. With respect with the turn lanes, they're included and shown on the traffic report, and he will have to comply with that. And that's also, I don't know that I can do a condition on a preliminary plat, but I just want to go on the record that he will be required to do that, and we will have the opportunity to make that as a condition in the final plat.
Okay. And there was one more thing, Eric, I think you said right at the very end about the widening, and that is,
The improvements and widening of Industrialplex and
Industrialplex.
repair of the damaged
And
sections.
again, we don't have the ability to condition a preliminary plat, but we want to be on record that that will be a
Yeah.
condition on any, when this comes before us.
so you
Yes,
agree
you-
with the widening as part of your
You
motion?
can, you can condition the preliminary plat, Julio.
I thought,
Okay.
No,
Mr.
you
Miller,
can't. Okay.
you still second?
okay, well, in that case, let me restate my motion. I'm going to revise my motion. Okay, so the motion,
Okay, hold on. Let's stop for a minute.
we'll start from scratch.
Yes, let's stop for a minute. However, I think Mr. Schexnayder wants to make a comment before you do this, so we can get it right.
Is, Mr. Murphy, is it possible, because from what I understand, yes, we have all this tax funding for our residential one. Is it possible that the developer would be voluntarily agreeing to participate in a road infrastructure taxing district? Would they be willing to do that themselves?
With the amount that we're paying for traffic impact fees, I would have to say that we feel that we are providing improvements or money for improvements for long-term in this entire region. The amount, if you look at the impact fee in itself, you're looking at Industrial Park being $1,520 per 1,000 square feet, which is pretty substantial in the long run as these building permits get issued. So yeah, I would have to talk to them, but in my opinion, this development will be generating 7 figures of impact fees that could be used down this Highway 30 corridor.
Well, it's less about the Highway 30 corridor, it's more about the public roads in this area. So having a funding mechanism for maintenance and improvement 5, 10, 15 years down the line, that's what my concern was, so that's what I was.
So let me say, the traffic impact fees are not just something that's set as, here's an amount that you have to pay because you're a developer and you're gonna be impacting our roads. It's a calculation based on, as I understand it, as on the impact that the development is going to have on the transportation system. But Mr. Sherrill, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I want to point out one unique thing. Because they requested an open ditch subdivision, they are required to have a 60-month maintenance bond. Okay, for this situation. The maintenance bond, they're maintaining the road, they're maintaining the roadside ditches for up to 5 years. A normal subdivision, I believe, is at 18 months?
Yeah,
18 months. So this one keep, factoring, I feel like you're concerned, you don't have the protection that you don't have the subdivision, but this one has. I haven't seen one this long, but for what they're choosing to have this open ditch subdivision, they're gonna be maintaining this for 5 years, which means there's an inspection 5 years from now, which is probably, this development, they're probably all built out by now. They're able to go back, DPW inspect every single roadway, checks for dips, faults, recleaning ditches, and then in order for them to be released from their bond, they have to go back and bring it back to establish a new condition, which is probably after all the heavy construction has happened. And then that's given out to the parish. And then remember that the building impact fees we're talking about, that comes on board every time a new building applies for a building permit. So that's really, this is phased out over time and sort of absorbing. But I just want to point out, perhaps you being aware of the 60-month bond may factor in your
That
decision
definitely,
if that's addressing some of your concerns of, does the parish have to go out there in a year and start rebuilding a whole roadway? This is a
And that has
5-year
happened before.
observation. Yes.
So, yeah, then I'm fine about that.
Okay, we're gonna move forward with the motion.
I have one question.
Okay.
Okay, this is the final question. We're moving forward with the motion after this question or comment. That's it.
In regards to that, for off-site drainage, were any requirements, improvements by the parish engineer placed upon them? It says they may have been, but it doesn't specify if any were.
Mr. Sherrill, you can answer that.
No, there are no required off-site improvements.
So any
Off-site
drainage
improvements on this
any
particular
drainage improvements that'll be covered under the bond are strictly within inside the development area?
Yes.
Okay, I think we discussed this to death. Mr. Dumas, you want to make your motion, please?
Yes. So, my motion is to approve with a waiver for the rear alley, with the exception of lots 1 and 2, which approval of those 2 rear alleys will be at the sole discretion of the director. the use of asphalt in lieu of concrete as the streets, to widen industrial pecs to the maximum possible width, and the turn lanes on Highway 30 and industrial plex as required in the traffic report. Furthermore, that the developer will connect to future right-of-ways for east and north, or whatever, as they become better identified in the future.
Okay, now we have a full motion and a second. Any motion that was made prior to that, discussed prior to that, all of that is null and void. This is the official motion on which we're voting. Do we have discussion and a second by Mr. Miller? Let's cast our votes, please. Seven yeas.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a series of ordinances for a public hearing to recommend approval or denial to the Parish Council amendments to the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code. There are 4 amendments. In my opinion, those 4 amendments are basically co-joined, and so we might as well take them in globo, correct?
Well, normally, when council gets them, they may want to change something in one or the other. It has always been suggested and preferred that they be handled individually, and that way, any amendments to each one of them won't necessarily impact the whole thing.
But if we have a problem with the main one, it makes no sense to recommend approval of the others, is my opinion. That's
Well,
why I'm
there-
curious, should we just take it in globo?
Well, I mean, because they're all listed separately on the agenda. So you would have to do 13A, then 13B, and so on.
Okay. Let me see. Yes, sir, Mr. Dumas.
In the interest of expediency, as you suggested, what if we opened all 4 of them for discussion, hearing, give everybody the opportunity to speak on any one or all 4, and then at the end, we make individual motions?
I could live with that. I could live with that.
I'm gonna have some questions, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, we can live with that. So, we'll go with, we're gonna open the public hearing. I'm gonna read them, and then we're gonna open the public hearing on all 4 for the public that's here.
All 12.
Okay, 13A, ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish ULDC Appendix 4, Section 17-40100 definitions by adding floodplain management plan FMP and off-site drainage assessment ODA. Item B, ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish ULDC Appendix 4, Attachment B, drainage impact study procedure, paragraph 1, study conclusions and recommendations, in paragraph J, consideration for protecting existing watersheds and conveyance systems. Item C, ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish ULDC Appendix 5, drainage to add new section 17-506.3, off-site drainage assessment. Item D, ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish ULDC Appendix 12, fees. So, do staff, you want to make any comments before we go into our public hearing for those here?
Yes, sir. Basically, we have a tool in a hydraulic model that HNTB produced over the last several years. And it is a way for us to better judge impacts more accurately, not necessarily within the subdivision itself. The drainage impact study does that. But these are impacts that may occur upstream or downstream of any proposed project. We have added some definitions and some descriptions of how that will work based on the fact that we have the model and we want to include it in our code so that any consultants or applicants have the ability to use that to better to provide more detailed and accurate information.
So just one question before we go further. The applicant will have a choice as to follow this process, or the parish will determine whether the
The
applicant has to
parish will
follow
do an
this?
initial analysis. All properties may not have an impact or judged to have an impact. There will be some that they will be judged to have an impact depending on their proximity to waterways, channels, and whatnot, and others may not have an impact. There will be an initial analysis, and if further study is needed, then they would proceed to the next step.
But during that analysis, and prior to proceeding to the next step, is it going to be the parish's discretion or the developer's discretion as to whether or not they'll do the modeling?
I think I'll let Mr. Shiro answer that.
The parish will always be the final determining if there's potential impact of development.
Correct.
A developer may choose, let me get a copy of the model so I can do my iterations and what-ifs and play around with my lots and fill and do the iterations in-house before they give what we call a surface, a design for someone to put into the model for the parish's official effective model to
Correct.
say, yes, you have no impact. If not, it's back and forth. You know, some of these engineers have the ability to at least do the what-if scenarios with the tool, but they're not doing the official analysis. They're just working it to get in the best position for the official review.
So they can do their own analysis without using the parish's model?
They could use the parish model to do it.
They could use the parish model.
They could use a copy of the parish. The key word is
That's what-
copy.
copy, I
didn't, you know,
understand.
because I don't want public, it's like we're just throwing something out and we can't control this, you know, this large model. The parish paid a lot to keep. It's the latest and up-to-date that accounts for everything. So a consultant could ask for a copy of it for them to do the what-if scenario, probably on the front end of a project, before they can tell the developer, I think this is going to be a tough one. I don't think you should be building here. Just don't even go to the preliminary plat process, which is
Right.
what we want. But just don't waste your time for something that they're already vetting. Engineers could instinctively sort of do some what-ifs outside, not using the model, and then send it over to the parish. But every project's required to go through the process, with the parish doing a pre-screening, and saying, yes, you need to go through. Now, it's not a decision if do you go through the process or not. It's really, you don't need to go any further, sort of like this Ascension Commerce. You're so far away from a major stream, there's no way that you're blocking upstream water, so that we don't need to go any further than that. We're still following the ordinance, it just stops there. The projects that are next to a bayou and stream, we're gonna say, you're so close, we have to continue this process throughout the evaluation of your project from beginning to end.
Okay.
So I hope I answered.
Kind of, sort of. I still have a lot of questions. So I'm going to open the public hearing. Do we have anyone who wants to speak on these items?
No.
Okay, public hearing's closed. Okay, so I'm going to go through a bunch of my questions before I open it for all of the commissioners.
By all means.
Thank you. It's prerogative of being chairman, you know.
Membership has its privileges.
That's right. So before I start, you know, let me say this. I'm a strong proponent of modeling. It's a great tool. It's used all over the country. There are a lot of companies that do the modeling, and the state's got so many models and so many contracts out there for modeling right now that, you know, I'm a believer in it. But I still have a lot of questions. So as I go through this, I'm just looking for some clarity, more so on process and whys, as opposed to is modeling a good thing, right? Because I may want to recommend approval that we go forward with the modeling, but I might say at the same time I don't recommend approval because I don't like the process, because we're talking about both here, right? So on the first page, floodplain management plan model means any of the most up-to-date official HECRAS two-dimensional hydraulic drainage models that are maintained by the parish. How many do we have?
I think Stoker should answer that question.
He's counting, I'm watching.
Yeah. 4.
So there are 4, and those models are based on, why are there 4 and not
They're
1?
different watersheds.
Okay, so
So-
so it's not the parish-wide, it's the 4 different watersheds? Okay. Also, and I'm asking some of these questions because I am not, and I know that a lot of the commissioners are not technical people that don't really understand modeling, and I don't really understand it either. That's why I'm asking a lot of questions. Why was, or how was HEC-RAS 2 chosen as the model? Is that the best model for this type of application? Or did we vet other models, or did just someone come to us and sell us a HEC-RAS 2? Or how did we come up with that?
It's part of the floodplain management. So CSRS was also part of the HNTB team that developed the models as part of the floodplain management plan. A range of different models were evaluated on which one was the best, and the best for the parish and the terrain and the drainage features. It was determined that HEC-RAS 2-dimensional models was going to be the best.
And does that go back to the original HNTB model, or this was something that was just decided prior to this coming before us, the HEC-RAS 2?
This was decided in, as part of the floodplain management plan that started in 2017.
Okay, okay. And I guess I may be mixing all these things because there's so many of them. That's not a question. Okay, so this is in, I guess I'm not taking these one at a time, I'm going through them all. This is suggested ordinance changes to Unified Land Development Code Attachment B, Drainage Impact Study Procedure. Item J1B. I'm going back to how do we determine whether or not this needs to be done? It says if the ODA screening process determines that an ODA is required, the parish will perform an ODA based on information provided by the applicant. So the parish, when it says the parish will perform an ODA assessment, is going to be done by a consultant or by the parish, and is it going to be the consultant that's maintaining the parish, the HNTB model, or is it going to be the firm that's doing the drainage impact analysis reviews for the planning commission, or is it going to be the drainage committees or commissions, departments? Who's going to be who is the parish in this?
Who is parish staff?
It is the parish's responsibility. If they have a staff that can do it to the parish's, desires, they can do it in-house. If they want to hire consultants to do it on their behalf, just like we're hiring consultants to do traffic studies, they would hire them in-house. I mean, it's no different than a lot of things in the parish shall review all plats. They do it in-house, or they can send things out. So it's the parish's responsibility to maintain it. It's never the developers.
I understand. I was
Correct.
just curious who. One of the things that concerns me is it seems to me like there's too much flexibility in judgment as to who's going to have to do this and who's not, and that opens the door to public perception and accusations of favoritism and political stuff and all that, and we all know that happens no matter what you do, right? I've been there. We've all been there. So that's why I was asking who is the parish when it says they'll make the decision. Is there a specific person, department, or whatever?
My take on it, that's to be determined.
Okay. And on the ordinance changes, Unified Land Development Code, Section 17506, Offsite Drainage Assessment, this is a new section. It says for any proposed major and minor subdivisions, those with greater than 9 lots, Ascension Parish shall perform an off-site drainage assessment, and once again, I'm asking who is Ascension Parish, and the answer is it could be the parish or any consultant so selected by the parish. Same one, on the next page, item 3, it says the FMP models may be provided to developers. And that is based on the developer's request, or it
Yes.
says may be? I mean, can we just decide we're not gonna do it?
No, I mean, we may supply it to them if they request it. We have technical transfer, hold harmless agreements that they would have to sign that would protect us. And we also would require that, because the model is going to be updated on a regular basis depending on works, whether it be maintenance, construction, what have you, that every time a new application comes in, they would have to request the latest and most up-to-date model to ensure that they always had the most up-to-date. We're basically going to, what we're going to do is, we are going to make an initial assessment and determine whether additional analysis is needed based on their proximity to bodies of water, streams, bayous, what have you, if we perceive that there's going to be an impact. Otherwise, we could just make everybody do it. The only other option is to not have anybody do it.
So when it says the models may be provided, should that instead be, shall be provided at developer's request? Because maybe it lends me to believe that you might just tell somebody no. I mean, that might be nitpicky.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you could word it any way you want. I think the may was used there so that if somebody says, hey, can I have a copy of your model, then we would provide it to them, provided they meet the conditions of the whole harmless and whatnot.
So, and then the next paragraph, and I'm sorry I'm dragging this out, y'all. It says the ODA process, the first stage is the ODA screening, which will include a preliminary check by the parish staff or whoever to determine if there is a potential for flood impacts outside of and beyond the boundaries of development. I think we're going to be hard pressed to tell anyone in the public that any development in Ascension Parish is not going to have flood impacts. And again, I'm not saying that they will have flood impacts, no matter what. I'm talking about public perception. And so, just to me, by the way, that's a dangerous paragraph. And again, item B on that same proposed ordinance change, it says the parish may perform an ODA screening and/or analysis for single family. Once again, when we get into may perform, you know, Wade's got a big family, he's got a lot of votes, and maybe you're not gonna perform it for Wade, but, you know, I'm just a guy with no relatives, and maybe you're gonna make me do it, because I don't have that political power. I'm not accusing anyone of doing anything like that. I'm not accusing or suggesting that the parish ever did anything like that. I'm only saying that opens public perception, because the first guy that doesn't, whose single family says it's no impact, and the second guy says it is impact, we're gonna hear all that. So those are my comments on everything except the fees. And with that, I'll see, Mr. Dumas, we're gonna let you go first. I didn't see the order that y'all pushed the button.
In America, we use the numerical system, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, but I'm a country boy. Well,
With your comment about maybe provided, I mean,
you're gonna go
I
second, he's gonna go
think,
third.
I think it'd be, I understand, you know, it's usual in government to use the term may be provided, but I think you should outline what's required, maybe provided subject to execution of a whole harmless agreement or whatever, right? And I think, so I think you need to quantify what the trigger is for you to be able to get it, okay? Subject to the whole harmless agreement and payment of the fee, of the current fee, okay? So I think it needs to be clear on that one. And on the definitions, floodplain means any of the most updated official, any of the most updated. So are there gonna be more than one, or is it gonna be just one model? If it's just one model, then just merely say the most updated official and call it that.
I have a I'm sorry. Do we have 4 models or 5 models? We have 4 basins in a parish-wide, or just 4 basins?
4 basins and a parish-wide.
Okay.
Okay, so, but they're all official at some point, right? Would somebody be requesting all 4 or just one in the parish-wide, or what would they be requesting? And you're only gonna release the current. You're not gonna be releasing one, the old one for Basin 1 and the new one for Basin 4. You're only gonna be releasing the current approved one, correct? So let's just be clear about, that it's the most, or the current approved.
Well, I think they wanted to leave some flexibility in the event that anything was updated or something was changed, so that the ordinance wouldn't necessarily have to be changed. If we have, the way that I think we're looking at this is that whatever modeling information that we have, whatever form that might take, that would be open to a developer to request based on this ordinance.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. You have a current model today for all 4 in the parish-wide. And let's say a developer comes in and it's adjacent to a significant drainage structure for which you have limited information. You have an existing model, right? And you may ask them, well, I need you to go model that. You may ask them to go model that 1 mile of drainage structure, whatever it may be. Now, you're gonna grab that information, you're gonna add it to that model. But the model you're gonna give them is the one that's currently approved today. Tomorrow, after he submits that additional information, you'll input it into your model, you'll update it, and that will become your updated model from that point on, correct?
Yes, that's the idea, yes.
All right. But it's still the current approved model.
Yes, I mean, that's why we want to make sure that each time an applicant comes to us with a project, they have to request whatever version of the model is the most up-to-date at the time.
I just think any of the most up-to-date official.
Any of is referring to any one of the basins.
Oh, okay.
So a development is, unless maybe it's on the very boundary of something, but any development is going to really need just one of the basin models to perform, to understand how they would make impacts. And regarding there not being information on a major drainage feature within the East Bank, the floodplain management plan covered and got the data of all of the major drainage features and implemented all of the major drainage features within the East Bank area.
Okay, so you just clarified, he may only need one of the 4. He may not need.
Correct.
All of them. Okay.
Correct.
Well, all right, in that case, I withdraw my comment.
Yeah, and so if he gets the 1, and it's shown that the impact is going to exceed the 1, then they'll need to model with the other one also.
And that one may be.
Correct?
Yeah,
Correct.
okay. I get it.
So to add.
And there are very limited locations where these basins interact with one another, and only in extreme events.
Okay, Mr. Miller? Number 2.
I'm good now.
I've had my questions addressed.
Okay. Shanks Lottie, you're the only one left.
2 questions I had. Number 1, I just want to make sure that this is a tool that we're using, not the only tool that we're using, and that we're forcing this tool in this modeling on people. That people have the choice as to whether or not, if they think, hey, look, this tried and true old way of doing this drainage study, yada, 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 we don't want to pay for your fancy way of doing it, that they're not going to be, forced to. It may be more efficient. It probably is. It's probably more accurate, everything else. I just want to make sure that this is a voluntary usage, not a forced usage. Can y'all clarify that?
Yeah, I'll clarify. The current ordinance, already dictates a tool, HEC-RAS 1. This is the evolution of HEC-RAS 1, the check, it's called HEC-RAS 2. This is the better tool. So no different than the last ordinance, we dictated the tool. I mean, we've done some reviews. Someone said, I don't have the skills to do HEC-RAS 1. Can I just do this? Can I do that? I said, no, the ordinance says you have to use this. It is the best tool for what you're doing. Right now, the current best tool, by far, is the parish's HEC 2D model. So my recommendation is, yes, no, we do. When they do a conveyance check, they have to use the HEC 2D tool.
Okay.
Actually, the project has to be analyzed with a HEC 2D tool.
Okay.
Okay.
My second question is the fees. The presentation we got had some pretty substantial fees. To me, I mean, obviously, I'm not involved in it on a day-to-day basis, but to me, those fees seemed fairly excessive. Do we have the ability to adjust those fees, recommend adjusting of those fees, have those fees modified on a yearly basis? What are our options on that?
The fees, is because whoever reviews it would be under contract, and they would go through selection process as CSRS, as the ERA goes through now. We have billings every month. They work on an hourly basis. They get something done faster, it's less. It takes them a little bit more time, it's more. We try to get the fees that have an average, because we know there's gonna be some that's above, we know there are gonna be some that's gonna be below. And we try to get an average so that we're not paying for the analysis of the developer. And anytime that we find that if we go somewhere and we're getting 30%, we're paying 30% of what the fees we're charging these people are, we can go to council at any time and recommend that those fees be revised.
Okay.
So a question with regard to the fees. So the process is that the developer is going to run a model. I guess according to the ordinance, if it's determined, the ODA or whatever, the developer's gonna request the model, and they're gonna input data into the model.
Only if they wish.
Only
The
if they
developer
wish.
does not have to request the model. The developer does not have to run the analysis of their proposed development in the model. However, it would be beneficial for the development to understand how their proposed changes are going to be evaluated in the model, because once they submit their plans, the parish will analyze their development in the model. So it would be best for the developer to understand how if it's gonna pass or not before they submit it.
So let me say this, you're where I was going, I just said it differently.
I apologize.
No, that's okay, because I said, I don't really have a total understanding here. So it's, whatever the developer submits, it submits to the parish, and then I'm gonna say CSRS as the engineering review team, right? Is going to analyze that in the model that is appropriate, whether it be the basin model or whatever basin model. At that point in time, the developer's gonna pay a fee for that analysis. What if it gets kicked back? Is there another fee, or is it over with just paying the one fee, even if you've got to review it 10 times? What's the, what happens with the fee?
All of the fees, we did something probably in 2019, maybe 2020, where the parish has the option that if an iteration of a review goes more than 3 times, and we see that we're just blowing through the amount of fee that we had with the time that CSRS or whoever reviews this is doing that, we have the option of charging them additional fee. But generally speaking, we don't like to do that unless we really, unless something is just really egregious, because most of the time, the fees will cover, for the most part, what the analysis is.
Okay, so since Wade asked about the fees, I was told a couple of times, and I think in our presentation that we received here at the Planning Commission, was that the fees were like the City of Central. But in my research with the City of Central, offsite drainage assessment verification, single family with 5 or fewer lots, $0. ODA verification, all others, $500. Preliminary ODA, single family with 5 or fewer lots, $0. Preliminary ODA, all others, $2,500. ODA, single family with 5 or fewer lots, $1,000. ODA, all others, $5,000 plus $125 an acre, over 30 acres. Now, my research may be wrong. Let me just say that. I'm not in any way saying that what I have here is accurate. But that doesn't seem to me to transmit or match what we're saying here. So I guess that's not a question. I guess that's just a statement.
I can say, we started with those numbers, and then.
We started with which?
With the City of Central numbers.
Okay.
The City of Central for 1 year covered the fees, and then did an analysis, look back on how much was spent on average per development, given the development characteristics, and then came up with those fees. Actually, those fees that you quoted are the proposed fees that are up.
Okay.
The current fees are only for 5 or lots greater, $5,000 plus 125 over 30 acres.
Those are the only fees in Central.
Correct. Soon to be changed with the ones you have there proposed. However, we started with that information, and through discussions over a couple months have come to the fees that are proposed to you today.
Okay, any further discussion, Mr. Kluat?
So just for my clarification, and I'm tracking on what you're saying, and I agree, is it behooves the developer to request the model, to do his own, to maybe cut this off at the pass and say, okay, this isn't a viable project or not. To request that the model, he's charged a fee? Okay, all right. But if it triggers that we're gonna have to do the model, then the fee proceeds. All right, I'm good.
First trigger the first $500 just to screen it.
Right.
Now, we can say, listen, your projects, you can look at the results. You're so far in the conveyance zone. It's gonna be we've seen it, it's gonna be uphill battle. I don't see how you're gonna make this thing work. They understand that thing may just stop there, or it's realized you're not in the zone itself. We don't know to go any further. You're so far from us. We've looked at it. You can just stop right there. So some of them will be, even though they're going to full development, they'll be stopping at $500.
So
Some of them that requires the full analysis, that's when they start encroaching to the second step fee.
So if it's determined by the parish that there's no impact outside the boundaries of the development, they don't have to do a drainage study?
Yes, remember, this is, to make it,
Drainage study.
let me be comfortable, John,
I know there's a difference between
remember,
modeling and a
there's different
drainage
things.
study. I know
Remember,
that.
what we're doing here,
Off-site.
your current drainage ordinance requires multiple things to consider. One, don't send any more water downstream than what your site used to do before. Two, don't get in the way when, we all know when a big storm happens, it doesn't stay in the ditch. It gets out and uses the land and moves its way across. That's called conveyance check, okay? I'm just gonna simplify it to those two things. The ordinance requires that. If you're along a stream, around a stream, we think you're gonna be blocking water, you gotta do a conveyance check. That's one big part of your ordinance. Second part is don't send any more water downstream, don't block water from your neighbors, right? This, what we're talking about here is using a different tool, a better tool, to do what's already in the ordinance, do a conveyance check, okay? So even if I said you pass this conveyance, because you're not even near a stream, there's no need to go any further, you still have to do the rest of the drainage study. Every project that's currently required to do the drainage study is still required to do the drainage study.
Okay, that's what I wanted clarity
That's a good
on.
question.
Yeah. Okay.
And that drainage study is done by the developer's engineer. They continue on. So just this whole, imagine someone questioned the results, you give the results, just no difference than I'm waiting for someone for these traffic impact studies, that the parish's consultant says, this is your results. If they're wanted to see the results, they're going to want, they have a chance to review and just double check everything. So that's the checks and balances. It's not just, hey, we've looked at it, thumbs down, no questions discussed, your project's dead, move along. You know, there is the checks and balances to this whole process. It's just being managed on the parish's side of the fence.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any more questions? Is anyone ready to make a motion?
For item 13A, I will make a motion to recommend approval to the parish council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend approval of 13A to the parish council. Any discussion amongst the commissioners? Okay, cast your votes, please. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Passes 7 yeas. Item 13B, ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish ULDC Appendix 4, Attachment B, Drainage Impact Study Procedure, Paragraph 1, Study Conclusions and Recommendations, and Paragraph J, Consideration for Protecting Existing watersheds and conveyance systems.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval to the parish council for item B.
A motion by Mr. Scheck Snyder, a second by Mr. Dumas for item B. Let's cast your votes. So we're not getting our votes. Let's try again. You want to reset? We'll try again?
Oh, he's going to change the screen.
Okay, there we go, 7 yeas. Next item is item, I'm sorry, yeah, I gotta find all my paperwork here. Item C, I want to be able to read it, so I have to find it.
Yeah, I want to make an amendment to that.
To me reading?
Give it to him to read.
You need to read it?
Yeah, give me this one.
13.
Item 13C, ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish ULDC Appendix 5 Drainage to add new section 17506.3 offsite drainage assessment.
I'd like to amend,
Well, there's not a motion yet. You make a motion.
I'm going to make an emotion to approve, recommend approval with 17506.3A4 to include any parish consultant used in the assessment process is prohibited from being the developer's engineer of record or provide design services as a result of the assessment determination.
Well, we have a motion, so does somebody just want to second it for discussion?
What I'm getting at there is that you can't play ball on, with
Okay,
both
wait,
sides.
time. Let's just get we have a second for discussion, and
Okay.
stop, before we have too much discussion, let me go back to legal. Did you hear that motion?
Yes.
Okay, and, the question was, can we do that?
Yes.
Okay, now,
My issue with that is that these people are professional engineers that are governed by a certain code of of behavior, for lack of a better term, they're prohibited from being able to, I don't know what the word is,
Double dip.
to double dip, collude, okay? Which is why I have a professional license, and I can tell you that I'm prohibited from doing something like that, where I can work for both the client and the regulator, okay? So I seconded the motion for that reason, and now that I've had my piece, I'm going to respectfully withdraw my motion.
Your
I
second.
can't support
You
it.
withdraw your
My
second.
second. I can't support the motion with that. It would, it's a code, for me, it's a code of ethics issue, and.
I agree, which is why I
Yeah.
think the transparency there, that you're on one side of the fence or the other.
Okay,
You're either
okay.
making the,
They're required to be that.
Time out. So the second to the motion is withdrawn. We don't have to have any discussion unless we have another second. Is there anyone else that would like to second this motion? Okay, so the motion dies for lack of second.
I
Is
will
there
make a
another
motion to
motion?
recommend approval to the parish council.
Mr. Dumas makes a motion to recommend approval to the parish council. Second by Mr. Kluat. Is there any discussion on that? Okay, cast your votes. It's 6 yeas, Mr. Miller voting no. Motion passes. Next item is 13D, ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish ULTC Appendix 12 fees.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval to the council with the statement also added that the council is to review these fees on an annual basis, with the addition of that requirement.
We have a motion to recommend the fees with the caveat that the council
Shall review
annually.
these fees on an annual basis.
And do we have a second for that? There's a second. Motion by Sheikh Snyder, second by Dumas. And I would say, I think that rather than say annually, we should ask them to review these proposed fees prior to any adoption and then review annually. Because the way you've said it, they will adopt it like this and they won't review it for another year. I think they should review it when they consider this ordinance. They should review these fees, make some determination as to whether or not these are fees that they want to live with, and also be required to shall review annually. That would be my request for the motion.
I can live with that, and then what I'll do is I will modify my motion to recommend approval to the council as written, with the caveat that the council review these fees before approval, and in perpetuity, review these annual for this.
Mr. Dumas, do you still second?
Yes, I do, but I have a question to
Okay.
staff about this.
That's right, I just saw you had
Yeah.
your yellow light on. I noticed.
May I? Okay.
Yes.
We have a bunch of other fees in the code, right?
Yes.
Doesn't the council review those on a regular basis?
Well, we go through they're reviewed by staff, and if any changes need to be made, then staff will bring it to you guys and then to the council.
So that normally happens on a regular basis or an ongoing
Yes,
process?
yes, we review that when we look through budget, we look at how much work we do each year, and we analyze those fees.
So what you're saying is that recommendation that they have to review this on an annual basis is pretty much not necessary.
Correct.
I mean, it's gonna result in probably having to produce a report each year to show, what we charged or what we took in for the analyses and what we spent on review fees to the ERA.
And those would have to come before the planning commission?
Well, if we do that, generally, if it's something that you just say, we want it to go straight to council to review every year, then I would imagine, I could ask Jean Paul, but I would imagine we could go straight to council.
Because
with
I
it.
don't remember reviewing a bunch of fees since
Yeah, I
I've been
haven't
on the
reviewed the
commission.
fees, yeah.
So.
What is our normal process for any type of fee reviews or anything like that? It's just administration, staff has reviewed this, said there's either, look, we're not adding enough, we're adding too much.
Generally speaking, most of the fees that we charge are on the low, they're not necessarily on the low side, but we generally review things when we see, hey, man, we're doing X amount of projects or permits a year, and we're spending X amount of dollars, and we're only taking in this, because we'd like to try to even it out. More times than not, we're trying to catch up, as opposed to having something that we're trying to pull back on, because we think we're charging too much.
Disagree?
Oh, wait, hold on. We have a motion and a second on the floor, and the
Well,
floor
it's
is
up
open
for
for
discussion
discussion.
right now,
And Ms.
Michelle.
Unitas wants
So
to.
I guess what you're trying to get at, Wade, is kind of like having sort of an annual audit of how the fees were expended and making sure, because my understanding of how the cooperative endeavor agreement's working with the person who's doing the modeling, is they're doing a pass-through thing, and we have to make sure that the parish isn't somehow benefiting, and that everything's going where it needs to go. So that everything's kind of balancing out to zero, and there's some sort of
Well, the
trail for
auditing
that.
aspect of it is beyond this. This is more of, we're shown a fee recommendation already. Based on what Max is saying, based on the discussions I've had with people, it seems excessive. Unless somebody shows me something different, to me, it seems excessive. So what I want is, at least before we move this, before the council really adopts this, I want them to basically say, we agree that these fees have been, that they're proper. We don't believe these are excessive. So I want them to review it and then have this continuously reviewed. If it's necessary to be continuously reviewed, if y'all have a procedure in place and that review is happening, I can take that out. But as written, as prepared to us, I think those fees seem excessive. So I want council to focus on that before they give their final approval. So if I need to reword my motion, that's fine, but I personally feel too strongly that these fees are, as written right now, are too excessive.
Well, I can tell you a couple of things. We're certainly gonna have the fees, and if we find that we're overcharging people, obviously we can't do that. And number two, the council is, I would venture a guess, is gonna really look at this hard, and if they wanna change something, they're gonna change it.
Well, the delta that I've seen between Central and what we're proposing is huge. Mr. Villa?
Simple question. Did you derive at these fees based on the data you've had, what you spent in the past?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Have you derived at these fees from data you've had in the past of what you spent in the past? Or that's just an arbitrary number that said
No,
we
it's not
think?
an arbitrary number. It was a number that was derived, like Stoker said, from the city of Central in knowing how our reviews normally go
So
and
it's
how
not our
complicated
data.
these are.
It's based on what they charge.
Well, based on.
It's
what
based
they
on the
charge.
time that they spend on
Or
review of
I say
projects.
charge, based on what they published as their fees. So I was just trying to get to Wade's, help Wade.
No,
But
we have a
anyway,
motion. We have a motion.
Then, in that case, then I can actually offer a substitute and remove the review, the annual review. But I definitely want the council to review these fees before I want that right in their face first. Okay.
And I will second your amended motion to approve without that stipulation.
Okay.
And I don't agree with you removing that from your motion, just so you know. Any further discussion? Cast your votes on the motion. Six yeas, NASA voting no. We have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Miller, second by Mr. Villa. Adjourn.